Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Sybil Rosado, and I am a professor from Benedict College in Columbia, South Carolina. I'm here with the summer research internship with the Department of Homeland Security, and I have two undergraduate students with me. I am a professor of cybersecurity and social science now. In a former life, was a lawyer who practiced employment law. And so that is why I'm giving you this talk today. I'm a Vanderbilt law graduate. I have a degree in anthropology and sociology from the University of Florida, a master's degree in cybersecurity, and a master's degree in women's studies and sociology. So I really like school a lot. So there's going to be a quiz today for sure. Okay? So the first thing we want to talk about is the fact that basically sexual harassment is illegal in education. And this hasn't always been the case, which is very interesting because as I've progressed in the academy over the years, I've experienced some very interesting things even before I got started as an attorney. We look at the law, and everybody's familiar with the Me Too movement, right? And I think that's really interesting because it really brought the concept to the forefront. So I'm thinking you all are going to pass my quiz with flying colors, and I'm going to be sad because you don't fail. Because it's always good to fail at first and then succeed later. So I'm going to take the first quiz. A school can be liable for the inappropriate behavior of its students. True. See, I knew it. Definitely true. A lot of times people think that the only way you could be liable is if it's an employer harassing this underling. You have this vision of the young girl and the old decrepit guy who's like, come sit on my lap. When the reality is, I'm probably very, very bad about committing sexual harassment on the regular because I'm from the South. What do I call you? These are my students. What do I call you? Hey, baby, sweetie pie, honey. And it's a Southern thing, but it definitely could be construed as sexual harassment in certain situations. So, next one, social media harassment. True or false? If an employee willingly extends a friend request to his or her supervisor or coworker, so I say, yes, you can be my friend, and then they start harassing me, is that sexual harassment? Yes, no, yes, I've got some no's, and yes, it's some, I don't know. False. Many times people think they asked for it. They think, oh, so it is true that it's sexual harassment. It's false. You're not responsible. So the issue becomes that people think, oh, it's not sexual harassment because I said yes. I said they could be my friend. I didn't know they'd be watching me every 5 seconds, looking at everything I do, downloading my photos, pinning them up in the office. You don't think about that kind of stuff. So classroom harassment. If a professor repeatedly makes sexual jokes in class and no one involved in the course complains, the school bears no responsibility because this isn't harassment. False. Now what's interesting about this is a lot of people will cite academic freedom. When I teach gender studies, I talk about sex in class. When I teach sociology, I talk about pornography. I tell people ahead of time, I'm going to talk about pornography and sex if you don't want to hear this, because where I work, it's a Bible-based, in the South, it's an area called the Bible Belt, and we have some different rules here, like you can't buy liquor at the Walmart, not liquor, you can buy wine. Interesting. You can't buy liquor at the convenience store like you can here. It's all very regulated. So we have some different laws, and so we have a different population. So I have to be concerned about the culture that's there. So I tell students ahead of time, I'm going to talk about pornography. I'm going to cuss in class probably. I'm going to do this. I give this whole list of things that might happen just in case I offend your sensibilities ahead of time so that I can make sure I don't offend you. You don't have to come to class if I'm doing the pornography lecture if that offends you. If I'm talking about a woman's choice, you can raise your hand and say you think that you disagree with me. If I'm talking about pregnancy, you can have a voice. So I have to be very careful with that. But a lot of times what will happen is people are unaware of the fact that these kinds of things that are happening could be construed as sexual harassment. If your professor is like, well, if you want to meet me at the bar, well, do you want to meet them at the bar? Maybe it's just a networking event. Maybe it's their academic freedom, or maybe it's not. This is where the reasonable person standard comes in. And in the law, basically what we've said is, what a reasonable person would consider harassment is what we consider harassment. Now, I'll be honest with you, my specialty in law is defense of sexual harassment, and I've always had a problem with who's reasonable. How do you decide this? I'm not sure. Maybe that's not reasonable to me. And it used to be, and interestingly enough, the reasonable woman standard. Because what did it indicate when they said it was the reasonable woman standard? Made it seem like men couldn't be harassed. Campus harassment. A registration advisor who tells a student he or she might be able to get into class if the student dates the advisor is probably committing harassment. That's of course true. That's true, of course. And so we're going to talk about, our objectives here are to look at the law that changed in my lifetime, Title IX. We're going to talk about what sexual harassment is, what you can do to prevent it, what the University of Illinois has, and what their policies and procedures are. And I have handouts in color for people. Look, I'm very excited. We don't have a color printer on my campus that I can use. So we have resources for people, and we'll talk about how to deal with this problem if you encounter it or if you see someone else encountering it. So Title IX says basically nobody in the United States shall be discriminated against because of sex, excluded from participation, be denied the benefits, or be subject to discrimination. A lot of times when people think of Title IX, what do they think of? Sports, exactly. They think, oh, that's just the rule that lets the basketball players, the girls basketball players, have a locker room. Can you believe they didn't have a locker room for us when I was in college? We had to use the boys' locker room. So let's see if this video will play. No, not enough sound.
9 things to know about Title IX in 89 seconds.
1. Title IX is a landmark federal civil rights law that prohibits sex discrimination in education. Title IX is not just about sports. It also addresses sexual harassment, gender-based discrimination, and sexual violence.
2. Title IX does not apply to female students only. Male and gender nonconforming students are protected too.
3. Schools must be proactive in ensuring that your campus is free of sex discrimination. They can't just wait for something to go wrong.
4. Schools must have an established procedure for handling complaints of sex discrimination, harassment, and violence. 5. Schools must take immediate action to ensure that a survivor can continue his or her education safely. Number 6. Schools may not retaliate or let someone else retaliate against a victim filing a complaint. 7. Schools can issue a no-contact directive to prevent the accused student from interacting with you, kind of like a restraining order from your school.
8. In cases of sexual violence, schools are prohibited from encouraging or allowing informal mediation of the complaint rather than a formal hearing.
9. Schools cannot discourage you from your continuing education since you have a right to education under Title IX.
You have a right to remain on campus and have every educational program and opportunity available to you. If your rights aren't being respected, you have options. Visit knowyour9.org and check us out on Facebook and Twitter.
So it's critical to understand that Title IX protects all students. People a lot of times think it's just for girls, it's just a women's thing. And of course, we're going to talk about eventually the fact that it protects all kinds of gendered discrimination. People think, oh, well, you know, they had a new ruling at Morehouse that they are now allowing transgender guys to participate on the campus. They had previously had a rule where they would exclude these students from campus. For those of you who don't know, this is an all-male campus. So if you showed up and you applied as a male and you showed up as a transgender female, they would tell you you couldn't stay there, you couldn't go to school. Somebody finally told them, hey, I think that might be a Title IX violation, which it clearly is because it protects people based on their gender, and that can include transgender, queer, lesbian, etc. So if people are harassing you, for example, say I were gay and they said, oh, well, I'd like to see you two girls get at it. Sounds like a joke. No, could be harassment. Depends on the reasonable person. Depends on how I view it. And so when we think about it, we don't think about it as just being a woman's issue. We've got to understand that this is much broader than just being a woman or girl's thing. And let's talk about that word, girl. We'll get to that. So what's sexual harassment? It's any unwelcome conduct. If a student comes to my office and says, well, Dr. Rosado, I'm a big burly football player. How are you doing? I had one come to my office and sit and stare at me. And all I could think of was, God, don't close the door, because I don't want to get, I don't want to get accused or anything. My hands were shaking, because he was so attractive, and he would just come and stare at me. And he didn't have my class. And I was like, why are you here? Now, if I had been a reasonable woman, maybe I'd have felt harassed. Could I have felt harassed? The 6'5", 6'8" football player sitting in my office looking at me? Certainly. I just felt nervous. I was like, ooh, my husband's gonna be mad. I'm just gonna sit here and do my work. You need anything, baby? So the reality is, it depends on the person. Certainly, if he had done that to someone else, he may have been accused of sexual harassment. It could have bordered on being uncomfortable. Unfortunately, I don't have any of those feelings of uncomfort usually, and so I've experienced some things that haven't been very pleasant when I looked at it in hindsight, and that's what we're going to talk about, recognizing sexual harassment. People oftentimes don't recognize it. So there are several types. You've got the gender-based, you've got sexual violence, you've got domestic and partner violence, and you've got stalking. They've included all of these concepts into the sexual harassment paradigm now. What we have to think about, though, is that there are two main things we think of when we think of sexual harassment. Quid pro quo, which is, if you do this, you get an A, right? Or I'll let you have copier privileges. You can use that color copier. Or B, I'm not the person actually being harassed. I'm watching you be harassed, and it's freaking me out, because I'm like, oh Lord, it's gonna be next. It's gonna be me next. It's gonna be me next. Or I see her getting harassed. One of the cases that, interestingly enough, someone called me about last night. They're working at a, I won't say which package delivery store company, and they said, okay, this is the situation. The young lady came to me and she said that this guy is harassing her. I'm brand new on the job. I don't know what to do. I reported it. I went and told my supervisor, and my supervisor came and said, yeah, it seems like it's all right. What is he gonna do? What should he do in this situation? He's the new supervisor, and this young woman came and said, look, this other employee is harassing me. And then he actually, I forgot this part, he actually observed the other employee harass her. And so he reported it, and now it's been treated like, no big deal. I said, document, document, document. Document it, because he can't be a bystander. You can't just stand by and let this kind of stuff happen, and he actually has an obligation to report this at this point. So gender-based harassment can be non-sexual unwelcome conduct based on somebody's actual or perceived sex. So for example, I have a lot of transgender students at my school, and people will say things, the critical one, they're constantly calling the transgendered female, male terms. They'll say Mr. to her in class. They'll say, I'm going to separate the male from the female, and they'll make her go on the male side. And the student came to me and said, well, look, I know that this is not fair, but I don't know what to do about it not being fair. And I just don't know, is it really not fair? That was the real question. Is it really not fair? Is this really discrimination? And I said, yes. By constantly referring to you as a male, by constantly doing things to you to make you segregated into this male section, instead of recognizing the fact that you're transgender, that's gender-based harassment. And yes, you should talk to the ombudsman at the campus. You should report this. You should, first make the person aware, though. And that's one of the things, too, that has been critical. Let's look at this one. This one is funny. Oh, we may not be able to hear it. Yep, I'll skip it. Can't hear it, sorry. So basically, when we think about gendered harassment, a lot of times people don't think about those kinds of nuances of, it's not just who I am, it may be how I perceive myself that I'm being discriminated against by. It may be how people have treated me in the past. And then the critical question becomes, can men be sexually harassed? Yes. Are men sexually harassed? Yes. I wish the audio would play for you, because this video talks about how so many men are sexually harassed, and what happens? What happens? Nobody reports it. They don't report it. They feel like if they report it, that makes them look weak. They feel like that's inappropriate, that this is the only thing that happens to women, that it couldn't possibly be that's what's happening. This is not harassment, this is just sexual banter in the office. And it even happens to men from women. So people, when I first said harassment, you thought other men were doing this, right? No, women harass men also. And we don't, unfortunately, see that as a problem when it actually is. And so in the video, they talk about how when men are harassed, they don't report it, they feel as if it has sullied their masculinity in some ways because of the fact that how could I be humiliated by this woman at my job when the dynamics of male and female relationships don't usually lend itself to that reality. So they don't report it, they don't document it, and when people see it, they also don't report it. The third-party bystander doesn't say anything because they think, oh, well, he probably is fine with that. That's okay. They never think, wow, is this appropriate? And the bottom line is it's not, and we unfortunately don't, it's not going to play. We don't think about it. But at Illinois, the college actually cares. And so I'm going to give you guys, I'm going to pass these around. These are the resources at the college. So if you feel as if you have been discriminated against in any way, if you feel as if you've seen someone being discriminated against, let me say the first step I think should always be tell the person what they're saying is inappropriate. You know, I think that sometimes we have in the past felt like that wouldn't work, but in this new age of the Me Too movement, when you tell people something is wrong, hopefully they will listen. We have a much more open-minded culture now about this concept. So now if you say, hey, that's inappropriate, I don't think that joke was all right, people will say, oh, I'm sorry, or, oh, why are you being so sensitive? Now the why are you being so sensitive, they're not listening. The I'm sorry and the change in behavior, that person's listening. So you want to give people that first, response of their actions are inappropriate. And as I tell students all the time in my classes, I don't think, and this is going to be controversial for you guys, I don't think Bill Cosby should be in jail because he did what was appropriate at the time. He did what he thought culturally was appropriate. He was doing the same thing all this time as everybody else was doing. Now, certainly it was wrong, but was it wrong in a way that he should be in jail for based on the culture? Probably not. Again, I have to preface this with the fact that my specialty is defense, right? Yeah, I'm a union buster, I'm a laborer, I'm the employer. So for me, it didn't make sense that you would allow somebody to do something and never correct them culturally. So this cultural correction is what we've got to move towards. We've got to move towards a culture where men and women say, you know what, that's an inappropriate joke. You can't joke about her pregnancy. You can't joke about her transgender status. You can't joke about that, or you can't show videos in the workplace, or my favorite nowadays, you can't send inappropriate texts of naked people with jokes of nakedness. A tool manufacturing company that I do some consulting with had a question. They were sending around texts, and it was a doozy, explicit joking text thing. You've seen them, right? The text with the video in them. Like the text comes and then it's like a video of people doing things. I was like, I didn't even know you could do this. And it's on some kind of, what is it called? It's like a service where you can see the video. And so they were just sending it around the office, and the question came to me, did this seem to be illegal? And I was like, extremely. And I don't care that it didn't come from the boss, that it was just going around among the employees, because it was coming to people's cell phones without them asking for it. Now I could see if I said, hey, send me that great picture of, Ivana Trump naked. That's one thing. But if I get it as a group text message, that's another thing. And people really underestimate the value of how texting and sexting can end up creating problems for you. These are areas where we have a brand new paradigm socially, and people have created no boundaries. Much like the Facebook page. You don't post stuff on the Facebook page you don't want to see, and you don't want your mother to see. And when, unfortunately, people do post those things, and then people can download them and do other things with them. So we have a situation where our digital impact, our digital footprint, influences now who and how people can access us, and oftentimes it opens up new avenues for potential harassment. So you want to think about all of those things. What are you sending? What are you forwarding? Don't forward it. If you got it, say, oh my gosh. Don't forward it and say, hey, did you see this? No, you don't want to be a party to the next lawsuit that comes out, because that's what ends up happening a lot of times. We have many cases where even kids who are underage are sexting nowadays, and then what happens to them? They get charged. They get charged because they're sending around pictures of the other 14-year-old or 15-year-old, and they're one of them too. But guess what that is? Disseminating pornography of a minor. It's against the law. So you have an opportunity to stop yourself from participating in something even accidentally. So you think you're passing the joke around, you don't know whose cell phone that's going to go to. What if it goes, for example, my daughters have cell phones on my account. My daughter's name is the same as mine. What if you thought you were texting me? You text her the naughty photo from the office. And then I go, because I see it on her phone, and I'm like, who is this from? So the reality is, you have to be very careful about forwarding those kinds of things, about participating in those kind of group chats and information. You want to make sure you're not putting your hand in it. Because what we want to think about is the fact that it's everybody's responsibility to make sure this doesn't happen in the workplace. Sure, making a joke is fine. Sure, having fun is fine. But you have to have it in the appropriate place and in the appropriate time. And when we think about these things, we want to make sure that we're not just standing by and not saying anything, because that's oftentimes what happens. People stand by and don't say anything, and they're like, oh, you know, she'll work it out, or he'll work it out. It can't possibly be a problem. He didn't say anything. So when we think about everything from inappropriate kissing, touching, those things need to be reported immediately. Somebody talking to someone, saying something that you think might be inappropriate, that's something that you then go back and say, hey, you know, that didn't sound good. Give them an opportunity. But if you see somebody touching, if somebody's kissing, my favorite one is the person I worked with in the library in law school, and he was my supervisor, and he grabbed me by the face and kissed me. Not what I wanted to happen. Not in any way, shape, or form. Did I report it? Of course not. Why?
Was your supervisor?
I was afraid. I was afraid. I needed that little $10 an hour job. I was paying for those books I had to buy. So oftentimes we're frightened. And perhaps if someone had seen it and reported it for me, or talked to me about whether or not it offended me, it would have been helpful. Because a lot of times people feel like they're in positions where they don't have power, so they won't report things. So they may need somebody who feels like they're more powerful to help them. So a lot of times it's very helpful to speak up if you are the bystander. Be direct. You can delegate. You can say, hey, you know what? You can see this We Care flyer. Let's go. You need to talk to somebody on this list. I think that this may help you. Even some of the pages, it's very interesting, where you report harassment, have a panic button in the corner where you can turn the page off if somebody comes in your office while you're looking at that page, so that you're not basically outed about trying to tell on them. And then you can try to distract the situation without directly confronting the offender. Those are three concepts. So when we talk about reporting, it's the university's responsibility. If a student comes to me and says, Professor such and such kissed me in his office, as they did 2 years ago, I had to say to that student, okay, you need to report this. It's my job to report it. If you don't want to report it, I still have to. So I had to report that. The professor that she accused says he didn't kiss her. They called him into the police department. He wouldn't talk. He said, I'm an ex-police chief. There's no way I would do something like this. Why do I need to talk to them? This is what he said outside of the police office. So when they arrested him, I was there to help, and we took him to jail. He bonded out. When he bonded out, I handed him the letter from the college saying that he was terminated. He's still in the college for wrongful termination. He did not lose his case. He actually won his case. She could not prove he kissed her. However, the fallout from it, the harassment that the girl experienced from the other students and the faculty members was unprecedented. I wrote so many memos about, please stop this. Please, let's not violate the law. Please, this is inappropriate behavior. People don't know that you can't do that kind of stuff. They think that the only thing that is sexual harassment is I'm the big old guy over the young girl. That's all they see it as. They don't see any of these associated activities as being sexual harassment. Everything that happened to that young lady afterwards continued the harassment that she experienced. And it was very unfortunate. And eventually, I'm sure the school probably settled out of court for that case. But it's an unfortunate reality. He did not try to defend himself. Had he come in and said, hey, you know what? I don't know what she's talking about. She's got an F. Maybe she's just mad at me about this F. Because he never spoke, because he didn't cooperate, that made it impossible for the school to protect him and themselves. His lack of cooperation is what pushed that forward. If he had simply cooperated, it would have been, she said, he said, let's investigate. Instead, it was just what she said, and what do you have to do from that? You have to move forward, because basically that is a battery. If you touch someone without their permission in an offensive manner, it's a battery. And you have to move forward on those kinds of things. So you also want to make sure that people feel like they are not going to be retaliated against, like the story I just told you. That's a major issue. So when we talk about the scope of coverage, if a student files a report, even concerning an off-campus issue, it's our duty to report this. We are here to protect you from everything that goes on in school and in the surrounding areas. It should not go to some small tribunal, you know, like school judicial court. It should be something that goes through the proper channels and the proper police background for you, not this. And this happens a lot of times, unfortunately, in sexual assault cases in colleges. They'll say, well, we're going to put it through student judicial court. And then what happens? Nothing. So many colleges are in trouble for not addressing these kinds of issues properly when they are brought to them and trying to shuffle them to judicial court. University of Illinois does not do that. They have all of the procedures set forth for you in that brochure so that you can access help and not feel as if you're being retaliated against, and be protected if something like this is unfortunately ever to happen to you. They promise to make it a confidential report if you need it to be. If you don't want your identity shown, you don't have to have it. It'll be just for those who need to know. A lot of times when people are reported, the HR department gets involved and they coach and develop the people, because again, maybe I didn't feel comfortable telling the librarian he kissed me and it was gross. I didn't feel comfortable. But if I had somebody to tell, maybe they could have coached and developed him, and so he would not do it again. Because do you think I'm the last person he kissed on campus in the 90s? No. I'm pretty sure he kissed some other people. He was not attractive. So we don't want to retaliate against students. We don't want to retaliate against people who report that are not the actual victims. That's the other thing you have to be sure of. And we want to make sure that people get accommodations if something like this does happen to you. One of the things we did for the young lady who made the accusation on our campus was we had her transported back and forth. They actually went and got her for court when it was time for court, because she had gone home, and they went and drove her from her city in another, it may have been another state even. We referred her to counseling services, and we made sure she felt the best that we could based on the situation that was happening. And we coached and developed the people who were doing the naughty stuff. Because oftentimes, again, people don't know when they're violating these rules. We've got to make sure people know the rules so that they won't break them, because they're kind of brand new rules. Remember, our culture has changed and shifted. The Me Too movement has made it much easier to make this apparent to people, and people understand it much better now. Prior to the Me Too movement, this was a very tedious procedure, and it wasn't as highlighted. So we're in a very good time now. Now it's time for your final exam. You know I have quiz. Yes, that's right. I'm giving a prize to, I'll take whoever wins to Starbucks. No, I'm kidding. In my class at school, I have candy. Yes, I'm a Jolly Rancher survey person. So this is your quiz. This is your quiz. It should take 2 minutes. Yes. Oh, there are like there may not be, let me see, they told me 25 people, so there may not be enough. Some people may not be able to quiz, you may have to share. Yes. I do not know where they are.
After this, we can like take a break on to the medical.
We're almost done.
Oh, you are? Oh, I thought it was at one.
No, this is the final exam. So, you know, the final exam is after the course. No more? I only made, they told me that there were only about 20 people, 25, so I don't think I made enough, I'm sorry. Some people may not get to quiz today. Can't get the prize. But there wasn't really a prize.
There's no prize.
There's no prize. The prize is knowledge.
But I thought everybody knows what's that person like? I drive, but they waited too long.
That's another problem. People oftentimes wait too long to say anything. There is a statute of limitations.
So like, they waited too long.
But it depends on what state you're in, how long that statute of limitations runs. Depends on where you are. I think it's 6 months here in Illinois. It's a 6 month statute of limitations. So something that happened 6 months ago, 10 months ago, you can't talk about, but 5 months and 25 days, you can talk about. You can still report.
Like, I was working at a hospital, there's this young security guard, I never reported him, he just kept following me around. I didn't know if it was like, he was
That's harassment.
slow.
That's harassment. Staring at you,
Yes.
leering.
Like the last day I worked there, like I told it was my last day. Remember, he was supposed to work in a different department, and he was sitting at my desk for an 8-hour shift from 7 p.m. until 11 p.m. to 7 a.m.
That's harassment.
I don't know about this third one.
Gotta pick it. Try it.
I usually just try
It's like, okay, there's so many ways you know, like,
if I have a boss
Are you cheating? I need a proctor. Yeah, a proctor test.
finish first. So I'll read this and tell you the one. So I say
Okay, so for those of you who have finished the quiz,
false, false.
so I see some people have finished, you'll notice that the answers are at the bottom.
at the bottom.
They're at the bottom on the back.
Oh, that sounds tiny.
That's right, so you don't look at it right away. So, sexual harassment complaints are generally false or unjustified. True or false? False. Sexual harassment can occur outside the work site and still be considered work-related. Incidents that occur at retirement parties and office socials or in training are some of the situations where work-related harassment occurs. True or false? True. Terms of endearment with coworkers, honey, dear, are considered verbal abuse and charges can be brought up against the employee. True. Women in professional jobs, teachers, lawyers, engineers, doctors, etc., are not as likely to be sexually harassed as women in blue-collar jobs, factory workers, secretaries, truck drivers, etc. False. And that's a critical one for us to really think about. We're in a university setting where a lot of times people think we're insulated from this kind of stuff, and the reality is we are just as much victimized by sexual harassment activities in the university as people who would be in these typical, in our perception, kinds of employment situations. If he didn't like the sexual attention, but she meant it only as flirting or joking, then it wasn't sexual harassment. I heard people arguing about this one. True or false? If I didn't mean to harass you, it's not harassment. What did I say the standard is? The reasonable person. If you felt like it was harassment, it doesn't matter what I thought. If I'm thinking, oh, well, I'm just playing. Is the court going to look at my thoughts, or are they going to look at how you felt about it? They're going to look at what you felt, the person who is being harassed, not me. So it doesn't matter if I don't mean it. Hopefully my employer will coach and develop me and stop me from doing that kind of activity. Sexual harassment is not limited to physical contact. It can occur at any time that an individual is uncomfortable with another person's approaches, comments, or discussions. True or false? True. Due to privacy, supervisors cannot monitor employee email or be found liable for sexual harassment via email by their employees. It's a good one. I'm sending freaking emails to everybody in the office. False. Somebody should stop me. Stop me now. Don't forward the Pornhub stuff. No, it's bad for you. Sexual harassment in the workplace is a woman's issue. False. Quid pro quo harassment is a form of sexual harassment when there is a request or demand of sexual favors in exchange for employment benefits or threatening reprisals if the favors are not given. True. Remember I said there were two types, quid pro quo and creation of a hostile work environment. Friendly flirting is not sexual harassment when flirting is practiced between mutually consenting individuals who are equal in power or authority. What do you think? True. Okay. Employees claiming sexual harassment who are aware but fail to take advantage of company policies and resources designed to prevent, correct, or eliminate harassment have much weaker cases than those who do. True. The young lady here, what's your name, sweetie?
Angela.
Angela asked me when she was working on her quiz. Well, look, so if I don't report it in time, that's a problem. I said, yes, it is a problem. There's a statute of limitations. You can't wait 5 years later, and that's the other problem I have with the case I mentioned earlier that everybody's always mad at me about when I talk about Cosby. You can't wait 5 years later and say, you know what, my professor harassed me in science. It's too late. How can I prove it? How can I help you as your attorney? How can the law protect you if you don't say something? And now that you're bringing it up, I've got to go back and try to find people who don't remember you from class to prove your point. So there's a statute of limitations that I think it's 6 months here in Illinois for the Human Affairs Commission. You have 6 months to report it to them. Yes, 6 months. 36, 180 days, 6 months. So you have to be actively engaged in preventing this, and you can't wait and sit on it forever. Okay? In order to be determined sexual harassment, the victim has to be of the opposite sex of the harasser. False. False. An employee witnesses another employee being harassed, even though this is involved a coworker, the witness can be considered a victim in this case. True. True. Bystander. That could be the start of the hostile work environment for you. Which statement best describes a supervisor's, managers, or team leader's potential personal liability for sexual harassment? And I want to say students, even. I'll add student in that.
C?
It's going to be C, exactly. It's common in many states for a supervisor to be individually named in a charge or a lawsuit claiming sexual harassment, just like it would be possible to be named as a student. So if you're participating in, what you think is fun sexual banter with the person who's maybe, not involved in it, and the next thing you know, you get a knock on the door and you get subpoenaed, don't be surprised. People are suing people about this left and right. You could be called forth as a defendant in a case when you thought all you were doing was joking. So you have to be careful about what you say and who you say it to. And understand that these are dynamics that require us. Talk to people. Say, hey, that was offensive to me. Speak up. Because I think it's our responsibility as a community to make sure everybody feels good about what's going on in our community at all times. We don't want to have somebody feeling badly, going home having anxiety because they're concerned about what's going to be talked about at the workplace, or what's going to be seen at the workplace, or what's going to be seen at school. Next one, William sent an email message to an employee recently assigned his team, complimenting her on her dress. Later, she was reprimanded for poor performance. She responded that this must have been caused by her refusal to become involved with William. William is stunned and denies doing or saying anything that could be construed as sexual harassment. What advice would you give William? The answer is, tell him to cooperate fully with the investigation. If the only evidence of sexual harassment is an occasional compliment on an employee's choice of clothing, it's hard to imagine this would create a hostile work environment. Again, we have to be cognizant of the fact that everybody's not reasonable. Some people are unreasonable. So you never know what may come at you. You've got to be prepared and helpful. So if you get a lawsuit, don't be like the guy in my story and say, oh, I'm not talking to the police, I'm not talking to anybody, I'm not helping with this investigation. This has nothing to do with me. I'm just going to ignore their charges. Because the bottom line is that it is very serious. And ignoring this does not make it go away. It could escalate the situation. Instead, be very helpful. Explain. If you've just said, oh, that was a nice outfit, that's not harassment. The reasonable person would not see that as harassment. If you said it 10 times this year, that's not harassment. If you say it 40 times in a day, that's harassment. There's a difference, right? So I hope that everybody understands now that if you see something, say something. If you experience something, say something. Talk in your environment. Tell your friends, hey, I don't like that joke. Not here. Let's do that joke at their apartment. Let's send that text. You know, let's just look at each other's phone. Don't send the text. Let's make sure we're not complicit in what somebody else is doing. Let's not stand by. Thank you very much. Any questions? No.
The statute of limitations thing, does that change for people that are really young? Like if you're a child and you wait several years until you're an adult because you were scared as a kid, can it go back several years, or is it?
It depends on the state. So we have statute of limitations change depending on the state that you're in and what law and who the victim is. You're correct. So for example, if you were in 10th grade and the science teacher was harassing you, you may have an opportunity to bring your lawsuit. And that's actually the premise that these lawsuits were brought on. A lot of cases that you see nowadays, that when I was able to speak about it, that's when the statute began for me. So it depends on what state you're in, whether or not it can be charged. Good question. Any other questions?
Okay, so what happens if I don't know how long the period of waiting is before it begins. So perhaps my situation doesn't apply. So like say originally you were in one state and the harassment occurred, and then you moved to another state, and then you started, and then you realized that what happened in that one state was sexual harassment.
Okay, that's a concept called venue in the law, and that means where can you sue the person? Where can they get sued at? Usually where the activity occurred at. So if I hit you with my car, and we're here in Illinois, and I go home to South Carolina, you probably want to sue me in South Carolina because that's where I live. But if I hit you here, you could sue me here because the actual incident occurred here in Illinois. So venue is the question, and jurisdiction is what you're asking about.
So that's the difference between civil and criminal, because sorry, that just got me curious because I know that it's usually a trial by peer. So is that so it has to be by the action, not, for example, like.
No, your venue is set by where stuff happened at and whether or not the court has the jurisdiction over you. So it's personal jurisdiction and subject jurisdiction. Those are two different concepts. But venue is where's the place for this case.
You know why there's this big issue that there's like a corner of Yellowstone which is neither of the states, and therefore they have an issue. There's this loophole that if something happens there, you can end up because they can't find a venue for you, you can end up getting away with whatever you did.
I don't know if you get away with it.
Really,
there's going to be a federal venue that covers it, most likely. Yeah. Any other questions?
So earlier you
transgender, queer. It's got all of the different names people use for the different gender. I can't hear you, baby.
Do you think that limits the statement of the effectiveness? Maybe if there are people not included in a specific list?
No, I don't, because I think that, for example, in the transgender community, you have people who are saying that they are genderless, and I think that the concept of not having a gender is still a gender-based crime. It still would be considered a concept of gender-based crime, that my status as not having a gender, as being, for example, I'm asexual. My name is Pat. Am I a Pat the girl or Pat the boy? I'm not either. I'm Pat, and I don't identify as either one. That's still a gendered status. So I think that it still encompasses that dynamic also. Yes.
So, another question. So, we've been talking about sexual harassment, and then I think there's also harassment as the general term. Like, what exactly is the difference between the two?
Sexual harassment is going to be based on sexual favors, on sexual innuendo, on some kind of gender dynamic. So, for example, you could commit sexual harassment by talking about somebody's pregnancy. Oh, well, you know, you women need to be barefoot, you're always pregnant. That's sexual harassment. It's not necessarily that I'm approaching you for a sexual favor, but I'm saying something, I'm discriminating against you. I'm creating this kind of bias based on your reality as a female. Same concept.
Okay. So I suppose like there can be like non-sexual harassment.
You said dog sexual harassment?
Okay.
No, they're not people. Non-sexual harassment? Yes, you can have just a basic hostile work environment. People create hostile work environments on all kinds of things. Just depends on if it's a protected category. So you have people, for example, you could create a hostile work environment based on race. You could create a hostile work environment based on age. We have a lot of age discrimination cases where they're firing all the old people. They send around a thing saying, everybody's over 65, would you like to retire? And next thing you know, everybody's looking at me funny. I feel discriminated against. You could have a discrimination case based on any of the protected categories in either your state or on the federal level. So it has to be a protected category. It can't be, I feel discriminated against because I'm tall or fat. Unfortunately, fat is not on here, and I think it should be, but fat is not one of the things you can file that people have tried, but it's not had a lot of success. But I think it should be there, because morbidly obese people have a hard time. And my mom was morbidly obese, and she applied for a job. She was the best candidate. I looked at her stuff, I looked at the other people's stuff, but when she shuffled in there at 275 pounds and 5'2", amazingly, the job was not hers. Is that fair? It's not illegal though. They could say, well, we were concerned about her health. We didn't know she could get up the stairs and get to, and that's illegal, because that's disability. But that's not how they said it on the paper, did they? They just didn't pick her. So it happens. Like, there's a lot of stuff the law doesn't cover when it comes to being treated differently. Disparate treatment is not a thing that is not, everybody gets disparate treatment. Whether or not it's illegal based on the law is what we have to look at. We all discriminate, but is it illegal? I like tall guys. Discrimination. I like tall guys a lot. Is that discrimination? Yeah. It's a prejudice. And if I act on it, it becomes discrimination. But is it illegal? No. No. So not everything that you do to discriminate in your life is illegal. But things that you do to people who are in protected groups, protected categories, are. Any other questions? No? Is it lunchtime? It's coffee time? I'm sorry I don't have ice cream social again this week. I thought about bringing the Jolly Ranchers, but I wasn't clear where the store was, and that was just too much. But thank you very much. I have a business card. If anybody would like to ask any further questions, if you want to discuss anything, I'll give you my card, and I appreciate your listening. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Sign into the attendance sheet. I was supposed to say that. Man. I didn't even notice that.